Welcome to another episode of Big Risk Energy. I'm your host, Roei Samuel. I'm a serial entrepreneur, having founded multiple businesses, including one that I scaled and sold to a gaming company in 2018. I've been an investor for the last 5 years, and I'm also super passionate about mental health and neurodiversity, suffering with severe ADHD and dyslexia myself. On this podcast, we talk to an amazing range of people, from actors to academics, investors to entrepreneurs, politicians, musicians, scientists, professional athletes, and everyone in between. And we talk to these people about risks they've taken in their lives, risks they've taken in their careers, when they paid off and when they didn't. And on today's episode, I am blessed to be joined by the one and only Mike Brown. Mike is an ex-professional rugby player, having won the Six Nations twice, the Premiership twice, and being named the 2014 Man of the Tournament for the Six Nations. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Roy. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I want to jump straight in because I feel like from like a human species perspective, I'm a different species to you in terms of how much more physically fit and capable that you are than me. So I want to ask, just tell me, how does it feel winning a tournament like the Six Nations? Like, what is that feeling like? And not in like a post-match interview way. Like, really, what is that feeling?
Do you know what? When you go into it, you think you're going to get to the end having won it, and it's going to be this unbelievable feeling of, I don't know, joy and enjoyment and everything that goes with that. But then it kind of just becomes, you get to it and you're like, oh, thank goodness we did it. And it's kind of relief, I think, is more the word. You're relieved you've got through it. You're relieved you've all the hard work means something. You're relieved that you're not going to get battered in the press and from people watching, and everything's gone well. And yeah, I think it's more relief, which is a shame really, because you kind of think it's going to be so different.
Yeah.
And then it's very quickly on to the next. As a professional sportsman, you're very quick onto what's happening on the Monday. What you need to learn from the game. What if it's something at the end of the season, having a few days off, but then back into training, and when you're back in for pre-season, all those sort of things, it's kind of straight on to the next, which is also a shame because you kind of want to be in the moment a bit more. And my wife would always say to me, "Oh, you need to be in the moment more. You need to enjoy it in that moment. Just take a second to enjoy it." And I never could, because it was always on to the next, always on to the next. But then on the other hand, I kind of think you have to be like that to stay at the top and stay successful and keep driving yourself forward to be successful.
It's a really interesting one, and something which so many people I speak to on this show and otherwise tell me is that, it's that drive, and it's almost the thing that stops you from being able to be happy and enjoy it in the moment. That's the thing that makes you successful. But is the trade-off worth it? Like, looking back now at the end of your career, do you wish you had been able to take in the moment more, or is there a feeling that if you had got caught up in the moment, maybe you wouldn't have driven yourself so much the next time?
Yeah, I kind of look back at what I've achieved, and I wouldn't want to change anything, even though I do kind of think, should I have taken a moment to enjoy stuff more? But then on reflection, I don't think I could have continued to be at that level for as long as I did and do what I've done and play for the teams and be successful in those teams as I have done, without being that way, without being driven and thinking about the next thing and what's next. And if I was constantly looking back, would I have been able to keep adapting, keep improving, keep developing, and all those sort of things? And I think it'd probably be the same for most athletes that do well. They're all kind of the same.
Yeah, we had a guy called Jack Green on last week, who's a double Olympian, and saying the same thing in terms of that drive. But it's now he's in a situation where he's just at the end of his career, and like you, still very, very young, and trying to understand whether there is that space within professional sports where you can have more of a focus on mental wellness, more of a focus on balance. Do you think that works? Do you think there's a way of getting that, or do you need to just have that ruthless mentality of more?
I think it would have been good to have someone that can kind of pull you up in those sporting environments to maybe say, "Oh, take a minute, Let's reflect a bit more. Let's look back on stuff. Let's talk through stuff together. I remember after winning the Six Nations in 2016, I think it was 16. I kind of just sat there and thought to myself, "Wow, is that it? It was that." I've grown up since the age of 5 watching this Five Nations, then Six Nations now. Desperate to win it, desperate to be part of it, and then you win it, and it's kind of like, right, what's next? And then you're straight back into your club, and into Premiership games, and it's kind of forgotten. And yeah, you just kind of think, oh, is that it? Is that you kind of it's weird. It's weird sort of feeling. You kind of feel drained, and back to the relief thing I spoke about earlier. So it would have been nice to have someone like a well-being coach or a mental coach or a life coach even to kind of pull you back and let's go through it. Let's go through the feelings and the emotions and what you're feeling now before the next stuff comes.
Yeah.
Maybe on a Monday morning, quickly have someone to kind of go through everything. Thinking about it now, speaking to you, it'd be nice to have someone like that to go through everything and reflect on everything.
Yeah, 100%. I think, you see an increasing trend, I know, with some Premier League clubs employing full-time sports psychologists, who are there to coach people. And I think it's something which, I don't think human beings are designed to compete at that level, right? It's not something in our nature to be like elite athletes and be like, having that sort of regime, that schedule. And obviously there are... there's a lot of biology behind like being alpha, being someone who's a hunter on that side, but like actually the psychological impact of the structure and the pressure of being an elite athlete is not something which we're really designed for, right?
I would probably agree with you. Thinking about how I felt after coming away from England camps, you just feel so mentally drained. You're going to be physically drained because it's a step up from what you're used to at your club and in terms of training and games. But the mental side of it, how drained you feel and how tired you are, and trying to have to lift yourself back up to be back in the club, and you're kind of institutionalized because you've been in a camp, in a hotel room, in hotels and used to hotels for 8 weeks if it's the Six Nations.
Yeah.
So you got all that, and then you're going back into normal life, into your normal everyday kind of grind at the club.
Must be tough.
Yeah, going back to your family at home and all those things that you don't have to kind of worry about while you're in a hotel. Doing your washing, doing your cooking, all those sort of things. You kind of become institutionalized. So yeah, it is draining. It is draining. The constant kind of grind over those 8 weeks, and it's from when you wake up in the morning at like 7 a.m. We used to be up and going till like I think I was getting back to my room between 9 p.m. 10 p.m.
Wow,
because you're
serious hours.
You're constantly on it. People just think I think people think you just rock up for a bit of training, have a laugh with your mates on the rugby field, and then that's it for the day, and you hit the hotel spa just to relax. But it's constant. You're waking up, right, what time's the meeting? What time do I need to be there? Do I need to learn stuff for the meeting? Do I need to go over my notes? Do I need to go over the moves? What patterns are we running? Have I done the analysis on the other team? And that's even before we started training, and then you have your meeting and you focused on the what's going on in the meeting so you don't miss anything. Then you're out on the training, and it's the physical and mental side. Then you've got to think, right, what recovery do I need to do so I'm ready for the next session? And we've got a weight session coming up, and what time's that? And you're constantly worried, am I going to be late for this? Am I ready for that? So it's constant. It's honestly constant.
And do you think that's the difference between an elite mentality that you have and maybe something which, other athletes don't quite get to that level? Because I have spoken to some people who maybe don't have the same attitude to training in that way. Obviously, it's something you've taken incredibly seriously. Do you think that's a big part of the reason why you got to the level that you did?
100%. I've seen so many players that are way more skillful than me, way more physically gifted than me through my whole career that have dropped by the wayside because they just don't have it up top, that mental side, whether they're not resilient, whether they don't plan well enough, whether they just kind of rely on those gifts that they've got, and think that's just going to carry them through. But when you're with people that are equally as gifted or more driven than you, then you just fall by the wayside. So 100%, it's that top 2 inches everyone talks about, and you know, whether you can be resilient and bounce back and take feedback and give feedback and constantly keep driving yourself to be better and get better and adapt and improve. That's what, you know, allows you to make those next steps.
So, Mike, what gives you that drive?
Good question. I don't know. I think there's you know, people talk about trauma in your lives, and that sounds very extreme, but my parents divorced when I was around 11, 12, and that was tough. And off the back of that, I haven't seen my mum since.
Wow.
So that might have been one of them. And then I think round about the age of 16, I joined a sixth form college. And we talk about risks. I took a risk of going to Harlequins on a Tuesday and Thursday nights, because back then you could, to join up with their academy players, to train with them, and if you got picked in the team alongside them, you'd play for Harlequins under 19s and 21s. So I did that, and was just lucky enough to get picked up, and through that got offered a contract. And it was that moment where I thought, right, this is a huge opportunity for me, so I'm going to throw everything at it that I've got, because I'm not good at anything else, and I just want to make it. You know, I didn't come from a rugby playing school. Like I said before, I'm not as physically gifted as other people that were in the academy. I wasn't as good at rugby players, everyone else in the academy. So my point of difference was going to be how hard I worked. You know, turning up before everyone else to do kicking practice and working on my high ball skills, and just taking everything in I could, and just being more competitive than everyone else, especially on the field, which is probably one word people use for me now. I just wanted to make sure no one else outworked me or outcompeted me, to make that my point of difference, I think.
I think that's an incredible story, and truly inspiring as well, because, you know, not coming from a rugby playing school, you're then starting, you know, 4 or 5 years behind everyone else. So you've got to do all that work to catch up and then go beyond them to get pick and get that contract. So is that mentality, that drive, that's something innate in you? Is it something you picked up from people around you, coaches, or is that just something which, you know, comes from inside?
I think it's a mash of everything, really. I think my dad was always hardworking, had those values of hard work which we would have seen growing up, whether we realised at the time, but kind of looking back, he worked hard. He was a fireman and then a fireman officer, so he worked hard, and I could see he worked hard. And, you know, even stuff like, you know, we did renovation on a house which he did all the work for. You could see how hard he was working for that, and he still does now. He's got mild MS, so he has to use a wheelchair when he's got long days and stuff. But he's still around the house doing DIY, and kind of sometimes you have to say, look, you're running yourself into the ground, because he gets tired a lot quicker and he's a bit older now and stuff like that. But he still has that work ethic. So probably that. I think just the realisation of an opportunity I had kind of kick-started me to think, right, I need to work here to keep hold of this and keep improving to get to where I wanted to get to. So I think it was that, really, that a bit of both, because I don't think I was naturally hardworking. I think before 16 and I realised what an opportunity I had, I was probably a little bit lazy. You know, I didn't do extra stuff with my rugby, and didn't like working with my dad on helping, you know, DIY and all that sort of thing. I was probably a little bit lazy.
But I guess it's finding your passion, right?
I think so.
And I think, you know, you've got to give yourself credit here, because a lot of people, you know, the thing with opportunity is it's always around the corner, right? There's always opportunities, but a lot of people don't learn that lesson until they might be 40, 50. So to see that at 16 and be like, right, here's something that I can be passionate about, that I can get my hands around and go for, is incredible. And, you know, hearing your story now, I don't know if you've seen The Last Dance, the basketball. You know, when I found out Michael Jordan didn't make his high school basketball team, right?
Crazy, right?
Do you know what I mean? He didn't make his high school. So it's such, and for me, this is what gets me so excited. That's why I love talking to people like you, because everyone should be listening to this and taking such inspiration that it's not where you start. It's not where you start. It's how willing are you? How dedicated are you to reaching your full potential? You know, it's how much are you willing to fight for that? And it's amazing what anyone can achieve when they have that mentality. And I'm sure you saw that time and time again, as you said, with different players that you've played with.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, like we spoke about, for me personally, like I said, I wasn't the most gifted physically or skill-wise, and probably still not. But I honestly believe in work ethic because it worked for me. And I've seen other players like Chris Robshaw, again, probably not the most physically gifted. If you see him running, he looks like he's a panting dog with his tongue hanging out, and he's not the most aesthetically pleasing when he runs and things like that. But he was a great example for us. Another person who joined the academy kind of at the same time as me, as someone that can work hard to achieve great things in their sport. Because he was a kind of a great trendsetter in how hard you need to work for us in the academy at that time. Someone we'd want to compete with as well. So, just looking at myself and that sort of teammate just shows. I honestly believe work ethic is the foundation for everything in any walks of life.
So who was your biggest inspiration in your career?
Wow. Do you know what? I don't know if I had one growing up. Probably my dad would always be an inspiration because it's your dad.
Mm-hmm.
And you see how hard they work to allow you to do what you want to do
For sure.
and provide for you, provide for your family and all that sort of thing, and how hard he worked as a fireman, how hard he worked around the house just doing simple things like DIY, how hard he worked to allow me to achieve what I've achieved and driving me around rugby clubs and introducing me to other sports that would have helped as well. And then it becomes, I think, when you have a family, it becomes your wife and son, which I have. So they become your inspiration once they come along to drive you to achieve everything, because now it's all for them. That's what you do it for. When you have a family, it's all for them. You want to make money so you can provide for them. You want to work hard so you can get better at what you do for them, to make them proud, to provide for them, all those sort of things. So they'll be them, the inspiration now.
Yeah, that's amazing. And looking back and just going back to a bit of your career in sports, obviously, as you said, coming from, again, non-rugby playing school, getting to that stage, when you win player of the tournament, when you're, you've got so many personal accolades. Obviously, team sport, all the amazing championships you guys won is great, but when you're being singled out as such a high performer, such an elite performer, are you proud of that? Looking back now, can you say like, wow, yeah, I did fucking well?
Looking back now, yeah. But at the time, like I said, it's on to the next. You kind of don't want to worry about that because you feel like if you're thinking about that too much, you won't be able to keep going. I think that was good at the time because for that particular individual accolade, that was a proud moment looking back because it took me so long to get there. So I got a couple of caps for England quite early on-ish in my career, 2007, 2008. And then I was out for 4 or 5 years. Didn't get a look in with England. And then got back in after that time, but wasn't starting. So then I had to keep working hard for another year. Then I got in the team, but out of position for another year. And then that was my first full year in my preferred position. So I really wanted to show, why I should be there from so long, from being out for so long.
Yeah,
so
you see, there's a chip on the shoulder.
Yeah, the chip on the shoulder, competitiveness coming out.
Yeah,
desperate to show everyone that I felt doubted me and didn't want me in there or didn't allow me to be in there. And I'd waited a long time for that opportunity, so I wasn't going to let it slip out. And yeah, it was great to get that. But on the other hand, as a team, we missed out on winning that championship by one loss and some points difference, literally like 7 points or something. So it was heartbreaking for that because we'd actually played really well that tournament and literally just missed out on the last game. So it was between, I think, us and Ireland, and we played Italy and racked up loads of points to get a good points difference. But then they beat France, I think, just last try of the game. We were watching the game live as well, and it was just like there's a picture of us head in hands at the after-match dinner in our suits, and it was just embarrassing and
brutal,
heartbreaking to watch that we'd missed out. So I'd have preferred to win that championship, I think.
Yeah.
But then that kind of made me feel slightly better, I guess.
It's a nice consolation.
Yeah,
absolutely.
like nice consolation. And I think I'm still the only English guy to win that. So looking
Wow.
back now, I could be proud of that.
Yeah, it's incredible. So let me ask you, we're talking about the emotional pressure, the physical pressure, the mental pressure. How much does the media play part of this? Does that come in? Does that a whole new level? Because obviously when you're 16 and you start playing rugby, there's no way you can visualize how that's going to feel when the public eye is on you. How much does that play a part into all the pressure?
I think it's huge, especially now with social media, how big it is and stuff like that. And I don't think, because when I came through, there wasn't the social media and that sort of scrutiny. It was just the media. And like you said, when you're younger and you're coming through, everyone's kind of kind to you, I guess. But when you start playing for England and all eyes are on you, any little thing is just scrutinised, and they kind of build you up to then knock you down, I felt. So after that tournament, it was then it felt like it was trying to knock me down a bit. And I did struggle, and I wish I'd, probably looking back now, wish I'd addressed that better or had someone to help me guide and support through that. But again, with the social media, starting to become big and how big it's continued to get, it was all so new. So it was all new experiences for everyone, I think.
Yeah, it must be really tough, and I think it's something which clubs probably need to do a better job of, which is protecting their players when, especially if you are going away, to England, although it's not during club time, as it were. Ultimately, protecting your mental health is so important to them.
Yeah, it's huge now. Dealing with social media as part of that. I would say, why is it not in the curriculum in terms of school? There's a lot of things I can't understand why they're not in the school curriculum, because there's things you need in all walks of life. So dealing with social media and how to use social media for a positive for you as a person is huge, as you would know. Running businesses and things like that. Why they're not teaching that at school? Why they're not talking about mental welfare and how to look after yourself and how to deal with that side of things, because you need that in any walks of life. Leadership, you need that in any walks of life. Why they're not doing stuff on that. Relationship skills, presenting skills, start doing that, bring that sort of stuff in the curriculum.
Yeah, I mean, the school system here is broken fundamentally. I mean, it's like the romanticism that we have in the UK around going to study English lit or going to study history. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, and then you get to the real world, it's like, I wish I knew how to do my taxes. It's all these things which are just so backward. And I think it's honestly one of the reasons why the UK is struggling a lot right now, especially versus the US. Not that they're not struggling, but the amount of people who are learning seriously applicable skills in their education system versus us is insane. And it's one of the reasons I think the country is struggling in many ways, is because we haven't paid enough attention to things that are actually going to make a difference to people's lives. And, accepting we're in the 21st century, like you said, running a business. What is social media? How do we use it responsibly? How do you use it for you? All these things. Like, we just need to wake up to the fact that if we don't switch the way that we're educating children, we are going to be stuck behind. It's not the 1950s anymore. We've got to grow up to this fact.
Yeah, definitely. Things like how to become more resilient as well. There's so much mental health issues now. Why are we not addressing this at a young age? How tools and techniques to become more resilient or help ourselves mentally, things like that. It's just so important, isn't it? So communication skills, giving and receiving feedback. You need that in any walks of life, whether you're a stay-at-home mum, you still need to be a leader, relationships, feedback, communication to top business people like yourself. You need all those skills,
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's now fascinating because you're coming now to a really exciting part of your career, which probably, at 20 years ago you weren't expecting to have achieved all the things that you have maybe, and now the opportunity to bring that into a new environment. And we talk about mentality. I think it's the most important thing for any business. And how do you see the relationship between the lessons, the skills, the experiences that you built in your sports career and how those apply to the world of business and running teams?
Yeah, so I'm trying to use what I've achieved and learnt through my rugby playing career as a platform to move on to a second career, I guess. and everything I've learnt in that. So firstly, again, everything starts with work ethic. So I'm trying to work as hard on my transition as I did do in my rugby playing career. And then I feel opportunities will hopefully come off the back of that. I think if you work hard, opportunities will come. So that's the kind of the mindset I've got. But, you know, as an athlete, there's so many things that we've learned along the way that you don't even think about until it gets to a point that I'm at. So, like we've spoken about resilience, communication, giving and receiving feedback. There's not many jobs where you're giving and receiving feedback pretty much 24/7.
Yeah.
You know, we're getting watched on cameras in training. We've got coaches giving us feedback. We've got our peers, our teammates giving us constant feedback, getting it from the outside world all the time. You know, when we're in games, when we're not in games, we're constantly having to give and receive feedback, which is big. Relationships, building relationships, how you do that. I think building environments and culture that achieve success is so big in all walks of life now.
Yeah.
How you do that, especially the way generationally we are now in terms of belonging and having a purpose, you know, building relationships, how you connect with people. We're doing that all the time in sport and we don't even realise it. So it's all so big in any walks of life, I think.
I think it's fascinating, especially like, as you said, that giving and receiving feedback, because it's sometimes like the hardest bit of any working environment is when you want your company to be the best, when you want your team to be the best in that commercial sense, but you don't want to upset, you don't want to offend. Like, how do you do that? And I think that's like it's such an incredible thing. I think so many cultures would benefit from that type of insight, that type of experience of saying, well, look, this is how you create an environment where people feel safe, but they know that they're getting feedback because they all want to be the best. And what does that do for people's egos? Because, you know, in I imagine locker room situation, you can tell I've never played sport at a serious high level, but what I imagine, you know, must be big egos, big personalities. How does that constant, you know, giving, receiving feedback impact that?
You're going to have egos. We're all competitive animals. We all want to achieve individually and collectively. We want to do well for ourselves and the team. So there's huge egos, obviously, in sport. I think the foundations for everything is the culture and environment that you're in. If you have a good culture and environment that allows people to give the right feedback at the right time, and an understanding of everyone in the room that you're doing that because you're all pushing towards that kind of higher purpose of what you want to achieve, and then your ego gets pushed aside because you know you feel that you know we're doing it for that reason. Yeah. So you kind of just get on with it, and then off the back of that, it's understanding, I guess, different personalities and how you communicate them and what's going to get the best out of them. I think that's something I learned later on in my career, because I think at the start I just expected everyone to be like me in terms of rugby. I was quite intense and direct, which there is times for that, especially if you're on the field. You have to be very direct with people because you don't have time to I call it like kind of fluffing around and arm around the shoulder. You haven't got time for that. It's do this, let's get it done. We'll talk about why we did it and how we did it later on, and say it maybe in a nicer way.
Yeah.
But at that time, we need to just get it done. So just do it.
And is that another thing which separates those who are professionals versus those who are elite? Is that ability to park the ego for the good of the moment?
Yeah, I think so. I think, but again, it comes from the environment culture you're in. You will park that ego if you understand how you belong to that environment and understand your role within that environment of how we're going to achieve and what you need to bring for everyone to be able to achieve what we're trying to achieve, and driving towards that and caring about that and have value in that, then your ego won't even come into play, in my opinion. But yeah, you, as an individual, you just have to feel like you belong to that environment and have an understanding of where you fit into everything that's going on, and where you fit into what we're trying to achieve, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah, super interesting. All right, Mike, I've got a few questions that I want to ask you. Not quick fire or anything, but the first 5 questions that I ask every guest. So the first one is, what's the biggest single risk you took in your career and what was the outcome?
Biggest single risk. It's a hard one to answer because as an athlete, you're taking kind of risks all along the way, and you need a bit of luck for them to kind of work. On and off the field, you're taking risks all the time. A risk recently was probably my ending at my club Harlequins, where I was there for 19 years. So my exit wasn't great. I was told middle of my last season there, that I wasn't getting kept on. The team wasn't going so well as well, but then the head coach moved on, and then we started going really well, and I was playing well along with a number of other players, and they kind of changed their minds. But I'd already kind of signed for another club and committed to them, and once I commit to something, I have to follow it through, as much as that would have been a risk, because it was signing for someone that was probably at the other end of the scale in terms of budget and success and where they were in the league, and it was moving away up north, a long way from our friends and family and where we're used to, because we've been in the London area since I was 18,
Sure.
and at that club for 19 years. So it'd have been very easy for me to just go, oh yeah, I'm gonna cancel that contract and tell them I don't want to come, and just stay where I am, where I'm comfortable, where I've always been. Successful team. We went on to win the Premiership as well. So it was in that last season I was there. So they were successful. So it'd been very comfortable and easy for me to stay there. But I just didn't feel right with everything that had kind of gone on and stuff that was said to me. And I won't go into it, but all this sort of stuff that had happened and the exit, how it came about, didn't feel right with me. And also didn't feel right that I'd already committed to someone else, to then kind of let them down and pull out. So that was a big risk to do that, and I did it. Yeah. And it didn't end that well, because I ended up leaving early from my contract, because it was not a great environment, pretty toxic from the leaders above. The players, amazing group of men and people, but it was everything around them in terms of support structures and leaders that were letting them down. So I ended up leaving there early and coming back to London, and subsequently don't have a job. And maybe if I stayed at Queen's, I did. So it was a big risk, and it was tough, bottom of the league and poor structures and support system around.
Yeah.
But looking back, I think it was exactly what I needed in terms of where I want to go in my transition and next career, because I learnt about what a player goes through moving.
Yeah.
Even though it was in the same country, it felt like a different country going to Newcastle.
I think it is.
Yeah. So if I want to lead players that move clubs, what does that feel like? What do they go through? What support they need? I've gained an understanding of, very different budget to what I'd been used to at a top end club, and being in a different league, I understand what I wouldn't want to be as a leader now, and the effect that I can have on a lot of people in terms of their welfare and things like that. So many learnings that I can take into my next career, if I hopefully get to where I want to get to, that I've learned just in that less than half a season from moving clubs. So yes, in terms of my rugby, maybe it didn't work out well, but I think in terms of long term, what I've learned, it could be a great risk that I took.
Yeah, I think that's amazing, and I think it's such a valid point as well, because the reality of life is it's filled with successes and failures, and you need to have that exposure. Like, okay, I don't want to be involved with that. That's not it, right? That's not it. And I think, from on my own personal perspective, some of the biggest lessons I've learned, some of the things that have improved me the most, are investments that I've made where it's gone horribly. There's no better teacher than losing a hell of a lot of cash, So there's lots of things, I think, to be learned on that side that's really, really interesting to hear. Okay, my second question for you is, what are you proudest of?
Such a deep question that you could go. I'm proud that I can provide for my family. I think I'm proud that I've got a first career that I can show my son, and we've got one on the way in Jan, that shows good values in terms of work ethic and resilience and all those sort of things that can go on to lead to success. So when I'm saying to them, you need to work hard, you need to be resilient, you need to bounce back from low moments, I can then go, this is what I did in my career doing that, so I got good examples to show them, I guess.
Yeah. You got the videos. I mean,
I got some videos.
You've got lots of good examples.
And I can show them, Daddy used to do a few bits, so. No, but at least I've got some good examples to show them and stories to tell them. So I think that really.
Yeah.
And hopefully that will help them achieve what they want to achieve off the back of it.
No, that's great. That's great. Okay. If there's one thing you could have done differently, what would it be?
That's a good question. One thing. Do you know what? I don't feel comfortable looking back on my career thinking I should have done something instead of something else, because it leads on to learning, or something else has come along off the back of something that may have not gone right and a decision you've made. So I couldn't say one thing, I don't think, in terms of my rugby.
Yeah. I think that's a sign of no, I think it's a lot of people give me that answer. Yeah. A lot of people give me that answer because ultimately, if you're happy with where you are right now and you're excited by the future, even if you're unsure what the future is, because no one can be sure, then why would you change anything from the past? Because ultimately, every decision you've made is what's led you to here. So I think if you're excited by the future, it's easy to look back and say, well, actually, you know what? Maybe if I'd done X, Y, Z, this would have gone slightly differently, but you don't know the outcomes of that.
100%. Yeah. It's so hard to say otherwise, because like you said, every decision you've made has led you to this point, and to achieve certain things and meet certain people and learn certain things as well, which is hugely important, and develop certain ways. So yeah, it's a hard one to answer. 100%.
Yeah. All right, my second to last question before I let you off the hook with anything too difficult is, what does it take to be successful?
I think first and foremost, which we've spoken about, is work ethic. You have to have a high work ethic. I think that's the foundations for everything. And then I think it's just being open-minded to get out your comfort zone, develop. Talking about comfort zones is probably something in the middle part of my career I should have maybe done more, talking about what you could have done better, is getting out comfort zone more for development. But when you, as an athlete, when you're so focused on one thing and in that bubble and on to the next, you forget about everything else around it. So that's what I'm trying to do now with my transition, get out of my comfort zone to help my development. And I think being curious is another one that I'm learning now. It kind of came naturally in this moment, just being curious and speaking to as many people as possible in all different walks of life, and asking loads of questions, and gaining knowledge and insight from them and their experiences has been amazing. So being curious, but yeah, work ethic, you can't beat it, I think, in anything. Yeah, as you all know, it's
the starting point, right? Without it, nothing else matters.
Yeah,
you can have everything else if you don't have the work ethic.
Yeah, you might get somewhere with a bit of luck, but you won't sustain it if you don't have work ethic. Yeah, or you might not even get there with a bit of luck. So you need to work to gain that luck and that opportunity. So yeah, I think for me that is the foundation for everything. And when things aren't going well, you can kind of lean back on that and work hard to find a different path. So yeah, it is the foundations.
Amazing. All right, my last one for you is, 15-year-old Mike walks in the room right now. What are you telling him?
Enjoy the journey, I think, is the easiest way to put it. Enjoy the journey through the ups, the downs, everything you'll learn, everything you'll go through, all the people you meet. Just enjoy that journey as much as you can, because it is a roller coaster. It really is.
That's amazing advice. Mike, anything you want to plug?
Not really, that I need a job. No, I think just to say that, for me as a transitioning athlete, and for all the transitioning athletes, is understand what we can bring to any walks of life, with our experiences, what we've learned, the values we've shown in our career and shown in amazing environments and cultures, and from the people we've met. Give us a chance in our next walks of life and our next careers, because I think on the whole we wouldn't let you down.
Amazing. Mike, thank you so much for today. I've loved having you on. Been an awesome conversation. Really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me, Roy. It's been brilliant.